Welcome to episode 23 of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast, a bi-weekly look at cybersecurity, including interviews, news, expert tips, and the latest trends. I'm Kevin Baxter, and I'm joined by my Firewalls.com colleague, Andrew Harmon.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew. As we tackle a different featured topic each episode. New episodes are out every other Wednesday, so subscribe or follow on your favorite podcasting platform to get the latest first. Ratings and reviews are appreciated, and you can drop us a line anytime at podcast@firewalls.com. As always, thanks for listening, and now it's time to introduce our featured topic and our guest for this episode.
We've spoken on previous episodes of Ping about issues with diversity in the cybersecurity career fields and how it negatively impacts the potential staffing pool, especially with projected shortfalls in trained employees in the network security space. But perhaps even more importantly, the lack of varying perspectives and background also hurts the actual network protection that's being delivered.
To explore the subject further, especially as it relates to careers for women, we welcome Dr. Neer Shetri, Professor of Management at University of North Carolina, Greensboro, Research Fellow at Kobe University, author, and expert in the network security world. He's also the writer of a recent article titled "The Lack of Women in Cybersecurity Leaves the Online World at Greater Risk." Dr. Shetri, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And so we'll start right off and dive into the crux of the article, or maybe the reason why the article was written and why you've done some other items about this as well. So what is the gap in representation in terms of women in cybersecurity compared to the rest of the workforce?
Right. Yeah. I have been researching this area for about 15 years. And one of the main problems I found is that this is kind of dominated by men, and only a small proportion of women work in the field. And just looking at the number all over the world, in the US, for example, in 2018, 10% of the cybersecurity force consisted of women. But if we go outside the US, the disparity is even kind of deeper. For example, in Asia-Pacific region, about 9% of the workforce is women, and 8% is in Latin America, and 7% is in Europe, and 5% is in Middle East. And so the gap is even bigger if we look at the leadership position, and only 1% of female cybersecurity professionals now work in the leadership, management leadership position. So the gap is really, really big, and the gap is deeper compared to other areas. If we look at the general workforce, I think about 48% of the workforce consists of women. And if we look at kind of even the science, technology, engineering, and management area, I think the percentage is about 30%. So compared to all of these, the representation in cybersecurity is lower. That's the idea in the article, and what are some of the reasons and how we can bridge the gap, and that's what I tried to describe in the article.
Right. So you mentioned the STEM fields in general are kind of male-dominated. Is there a reason why these types of jobs are perceived as a more male appropriate job, and what recruitment strategies are leading to that?
I haven't really found a lot of research which says that men are better than women in technology or science or engineering or anything. I haven't found anything like that. But the view of the society is that, IT-related thing and cybersecurity-related thing are the job that men do, not women. So that is one societal view. Also, women who work in a lot of outside the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics area, and they say that they did not even know about any opportunity. They can do things in science and they can do things in engineering. And so there is the lack of awareness among these girls who go to university that there are opportunities in a science technology field that they can take advantage of. That is one thing. And also the organizations are not really doing a lot of things, most of the organizations rather, to recruit the women workforce in science technology. And those are things maybe just going to these universities or schools where women's proportion are higher, and those types of things they do not do. And apparently when they advertise jobs, also, the terms that they use for the job description, they are kind of gender type of description, and just the terms are kind of, in some way, they signify that this is the job that is targeted for men type of thing. That's the way that, and organizations are not doing that intentionally, but when they do that, this is how the females view that. And also, they say that there are not a lot of, from the women's side, the complaint is that there are not a lot of opportunities for promotion and those types of things in organizations. So I think a lot of things are going on in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gender neutral job ads, you mentioned the male gendered terms in the job ads. Do you have any descriptor of what that sounds like compared to more of a gender neutral terminology or even like a female gendered word?
I cannot give you a specific example, but maybe they say that, the cybersecurity is really, it is not the technology type of job. And long ago, just 30, 40 years ago, the big organizations used to have one computer and only maybe one person used that computer to manage everything, and kind of highly techy type of job, high-tech type of thing they needed that time. And if you look at cybersecurity these days, this is kind of multidisciplinary area. We need the technical knowledge, we need knowledge of sociology, we need knowledge of communications, we need knowledge of kind of interpersonal management and law and all those things. But the jobs overemphasize the technology side. And just looking at the thing, generally, women are not they do not do a lot of these technology related areas like science, engineering. So one thing is simple techie type of impression, only high-tech knowledge is needed to perform that job or to be successful in that type of job. That is one thing that I can think of. Actually, the research that they cited, I haven't really looked at the detail, but that is one thing that I read.
And you mentioned in the article that women in IT are coming into the field from different educational backgrounds traditionally. So stuff like business degrees and social science degrees are more common for women in IT. And as you said, if the job posting or the job ad focuses more on the hard technical skills, these kind of skills where people are also coming into the field are being missed in that recruitment step.
Yeah, that is the problem right now. And I think they overemphasize the technology aspect. And technology aspect is really, that is important, but there are other aspects that are equally important, and the jobs do not mention that. The job ads do not emphasize on that.
And that really seems like it would apply to anyone looking at a job opportunity, especially since we know the cybersecurity field is a little bit short on staff going forward.
They say that a couple of million people, there is shortfall right now, shortage all over the world. And so just simply attracting more women is important just to fill the kind of gap, kind of the job positions, which are millions of jobs. I think something like close to 2 million jobs are unfilled all over the world.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think is interesting, we talk about the need for just more of equity in general as being, that's a good enough reason for trying to focus on bridging this gap. But another reason has to do with actually better cybersecurity by having better diversity in these positions.
Yeah, that's right. And it is kind of more than just a fairness issue or having kind of equal men and women representatives. So it goes beyond that. And apparently research has indicated that they've done a lot of surveys, what men emphasize on, what women cybersecurity leaders emphasize on. For example, one of the companies conducting that survey about the differences between the two genders in terms of what they look at, they found that women security professionals they put higher priority on different types of training and education and online training and all those types of things compared to men, and kind of low cost way of increasing employees' awareness of security issues, and they emphasize on that compared to main cybersecurity professionals. So given that cybersecurity is everyone's job, all the workforce need to be trained in cybersecurity, and we have to create awareness of cybersecurity among all the things. So basically, women security leaders more emphasize on that. That is one thing. And also another thing is, a lot of things these days is that organizations have to collaborate with the kind of partner organizations, maybe the suppliers or anything in the value delivery network. They have to collaborate and they have to develop apps. And when they do that, also research has indicated that women security professionals are better at selecting the organizations which are likely to do security job in a better way, like the organizations, partner organizations that are likely to meet different types of contractual obligations and those types of things, they are willing to perform security tests. Those partners, they emphasize on that part compared to men. So those are some of the things that increases security. And these are the things that men miss, but women kind of emphasize. And so both views are needed, the idea here is.
So, digging back a bit, you wrote an article in February of 2003 called Gender and Internet Usage, in which you said that as social products, any technology, including the internet, is not culturally neutral or value free. So, what are some of the macro level variables that sort of influence how these products are developed and what diversity can play into as far as what final features are included and what that final UX looks like?
The idea, I think, is kind of comes in the design of all these technology products. When you think about internet and computer and anything, so I think most of the designers, most of the IT people who work in this field are men, and they look from the men's perspective because they do not understand that much the needs and feeling and preference and all those things of women. So they might design all these technologies in a way that men are likely to find more attractive than women. Maybe, I don't know the specific things, maybe the color of computers and keyboards, layout, and any of those things. So basically, the design, people involved in the design are mostly men. And that is one thing. And again, when you say not gender neutral, that type of thing is probably, again, the societal view. If you go to other parts of the world, for example, let's consider Bangladesh. And I just did a kind of e-commerce project with the Asian Development Bank. And so if you go to these countries in Asia where kind of the religion, one of the main religions, Islam, and or even the Hindu religion in India. So like, for example, they do not have computer at home, most people still, and they take computer training in school, colleges after the school hour, like in the evening. And so basically the parents emphasize that boys should take training, go to school and stay until late and do the things. But they say that these computer things are not for girls. They should not take the training, and it is not important for them to do that, or they should not even be in the school after the hour, like after 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. So basically they emphasize that this is the boy thing, not the girl thing. And that especially in the kind of developing world, a kind of different type of religion. And that is also another aspect, I think, here.
Yeah, a little bit stigmatized right now. For
Exactly.
Getting back to the reason why this benefits cybersecurity, there are some other studies noted about not just the diversity of gender, but also diversity of just different backgrounds on a team makes for a more effective team rather than having 5 people from similar backgrounds, upbringings coming together to do a project. Having those extra voices is very important.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, diversity is very important, and women bring different viewpoints.
The other piece that you mentioned that I wanted to underline a little bit more from the benefits of more women working in cybersecurity, you mentioned the emphasis on training that's been found among those in leadership right now. There are so many cyber threats out there that the point of entry is an employee, an untrained staff, maybe clicking on something they shouldn't, or something like that. So training seems like it would be a vital piece of a strong cybersecurity posture for a company.
Exactly. And women emphasize more on this type of thing compared to men, apparently, in organizations.
So around the world, there seems to be quite a few different options that you've mentioned for training, especially for younger women. Israel's Shift community was one that you mentioned. Girl Scouts of America teaming up with Palo Alto to offer cybersecurity badges. Are there any others you'd like to specifically call out or recognize that are helping in this arena?
I think these are the, when I was doing research to write this article, I think these are the main ones. That the emphasis here is, again, kind of they should be taught this cybersecurity type of thing when they are in the middle school or high school. And so some of the countries like Israel, even the UK has one program. I don't know if I had mentioned here, but it is general for both girls and boys. But basically the emphasis should be teaching them all this IT and cybersecurity in particular from the young age when they are in the middle school or high school. And also the example I gave in Spain, there is the kind of one professional association, and they focus on kind of mentoring these younger cybersecurity professionals by those people who have experience for a long time. And India also, there is the kind of Data Security Council of India, which is a trade association of all these big companies with a couple of thousand companies as member. And so they are collaborating with Microsoft, and they have the Cyber Shiksha program. Shiksha means education, by the way, a cyber education program. And the goal is to create a pool of female professionals, cybersecurity professionals. So these are really encouraging thing they are doing all over the world. I think these are the main things that I emphasize in the article. And so yeah, there are not many things going on in other parts of the world to do kind of this type of thing, bringing more women and more girls in cybersecurity.
Yeah, you emphasize starting young, and that kind of goes back to, you mentioned the statistic of about 70% of women surveyed said they didn't pursue IT because they were unaware of opportunities in the field. It really is important to, when kids are starting to think about what they want to do when they grow up, know that that option is available to them.
Exactly. And also, I think it helps to build confidence when they start early, when they are young.
And the other piece that you mentioned as well that companies can do, we're talking about starting young, but the other method that might be able to help bridge this gap a little bit more is for career changers within an organization, presenting the opportunities in cybersecurity fields as well.
Yeah, exactly. Cybersecurity requires a lot of different types of skills these days, and like this is the teamwork that you also emphasized earlier. And a lot of people good at communication, and there might be the sociological aspect, and there might be the marketing aspect, and there are a lot of different aspects involved. And if there are women who are really good at the communication part, and then maybe they are thinking about changing their career and going to cybersecurity. And so basically encouraging them to, or not really encouraging, but kind of creating awareness that there is this type of opportunity. There is a kind of big gap of a kind of shortage of skill in this area, a lot of job opportunities all over the world, and maybe even better pay. And if they can educate this type of thing to those professionals working in other area, it might help to bridge the gap, actually, the shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and also at the same time attracting more women and increasing diversity and strengthening cybersecurity.
So are there any other resources that you'd like to call out as far as people can check out, specifically women, if they're looking to start a career in the network security space?
Really, a lot of people also wrote me email about this type of thing. If there is any academic studies or articles or books in this area, unfortunately, I haven't found a lot in this area. And so I don't know actually a lot of things that they've written. I think some companies have done survey, and it might be linked to my article, one of them. And so just it, I did not find a lot of other things working, a lot of other detailed reports in this area.
Interesting.
So shifting gears briefly a little bit here, we are a few months into lockdowns related to coronavirus, or a lot of people maybe not locked down anymore, but still a lot of working from home. How's your day-to-day job been affected by this?
We have been doing this online thing from 2009, I think. I have been offering most of my classes online for a long time. And I used to do a little bit face-to-face, and so I was not affected that much. And I really like working from home. And so, yeah, it is not affected that much for me. So, but for a lot of other people who have never taught any classes online, again, a lot of in the university, a lot of our faculty, both male and female, I don't know if there is kind of different genders are affected in a different way. I don't know anything about that. But so they have never taught any classes online before, converting them to these classes online and managing them and dealing with students and all those things and conducting research, and all those things are really challenging for a lot of people. So for me personally, it did not change that much. The only thing is that my summer time was, I used to go all over the world teaching classes, mostly in Europe and Latin America and Asia, and all of them I'm doing from home, this time online. So for other things, they are not affected here. I was doing online for a long time from the university here.
Dr. Chitri, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Check out the links in the description for Dr. Sheetree's article titled The Lack of Women in Cybersecurity Leaves the Online World at Greater Risk. Now it's time for headlines. In this regular segment, we take a look at some of the top news in the cybersecurity world, and we talk about what it may mean to you. Now on to headline number 1. Satori botnet creator sentenced to 13 months in prison. So the creator of several botnets, including Satori Okiru, Masuta, and Tsunami Fbot, has been sentenced to prison. The reason? Those botnets compromised hundreds of thousands of devices. So the perpetrator, 22-year-old Kenneth Curran Schuckman of Vancouver, Washington, was sentenced to 13 months in prison after he pled guilty to fraud and related activity in relation to computers for creating and operating these botnets, all considered successors to the infamous Mirai botnet.
Right, so the Mirai botnet's a pretty famous household name, so to speak, in the network security world. Basically, like any botnet, it's just a large army of different infected devices that have been compromised in one way or another, usually through just sort of simple scanning and trying out default passwords. You can brute force your way in with different sort of password guessing programs. And ever since that original Mirai botnet was sort of dealt with, there have been lots of spawns and different types of roll-offs and variants created, mostly by this Kenneth Schuckman, I believe is how you pronounced it.
I went with the hard "k" sound at the ch there, so Schuckman was what I said.
Gotcha. Well,
I'm not sure.
They usually come with a cool hacker name. I wonder what this guy's.
Yeah, this guy does not have a cool hacker name listed on this story. He does have 2 colleagues who have cool hacker names, though, who have also been charged but not convicted or sentenced yet. Aaron Starrett, a.k.a. Vamp, and a.k.a. Victor, depending on maybe the day of the week, or I don't know.
He's a vamp at night. Victor by day.
Maybe, yeah, that makes sense. Victor with a K, by the way.
Yeah.
He is from the UK, and here's another fun name to pronounce. Logan Schweiduke, maybe? A.k.a. Drake. Now, where might you guess somebody who uses the handle Drake would be from?
I don't know. Are there any famous Drakes we should think of? Where could he be from?
Yep, north of the border, Canada. So they both have cool hacker names, but...
That's probably why Kenneth got caught.
Yeah.
Shouldn't use your real name while hacking.
There's the problem right there. Going back to Mirai briefly. So one of the things that was so unique really about it was that the botnet army of Mirai was IoT devices, not just the computers that were kind of part of the first wave of botnets. And they were gathered by scanning for open ports and then attempting to log into them, as you said, with commonly used default username and password combinations. And so back in 2016, the thing that made it the most infamous was when it was able to actually knock out many major websites for about a day.
And that was the DNS attack on the Dying system.
Yep, the distributed denial of service or DDoS attack. And that's basically the theme of any kind of botnet. That's one of the biggest things that they do, or used for rather, are DDoS attacks. So Mirai was initially created by a college student who wanted to make some money on Minecraft, basically.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was an interesting origin story. It was originally built to knock out competitors' Minecraft servers, which I didn't think there was a lot of money in Minecraftery, but I am corrected.
Or Minecrafting, or
yes,
interesting. But anyway, yeah. So our perpetrator in this case, Mr. Schuckman, did make some variations on the code of Mirai, which had been released into the wild. So he, according to the DOJ, made his botnets even more complex and effective to facilitate his own DDoS attacks. He's been operating since at least 2017, and Checkpoint first identified him, not him, but one of his botnets in 2017 when it gained control over 500,000 to 700,000 devices and also exploited a vulnerability in a home router from a brand that we've mentioned a few times in relation to some vulnerabilities.
Oh, Huawei again. Yeah, we talk a lot about IoT devices and the security flaws there. We're actually going to get a little bit into it later with some future stories today. But yeah, it just goes to show you that when you don't have security considerations for devices that are proliferating by the hundreds of thousands or millions, you leave some pretty large payloads, so to speak, laying around for anybody to pick up and use.
Right, yeah. The opportunities for this are not going away, even though there is hopefully a little bit more of a shift towards developing IoT devices with security in mind. There's still millions and millions of them already out there that maybe didn't care so much about security, and still plenty that probably will not care about it going forward. In fact, in this story, Akamai reported just this month that it mitigated the largest packet per second DDoS attack ever recorded on its platform, generated 809 million PPS, targeting a large European bank. So that one was stopped, but it was a pretty strong attempt.
Yeah, it seems like we are getting close to 1 billion packets per second attacks, which is just insane.
Schuckman, in addition to the 13 months in prison, also must serve 18 months community confinement and 3 years supervised release. The investigation was conducted by the FBI's Anchorage, Alaska field office. But, of course, the effects of what he's done have been felt all over the world. So when you read this story and then saw the 13-month prison sentence, what did you think in terms of fairness?
When I first saw the 13 months, I thought it was a little light, but it's hard to say. I don't have a great context for what other sort of cybercrime arrests have led to, but it certainly doesn't seem like a lot compared to similar crimes.
Yeah, I guess if you compare it to like a physical crime of some kind, usually there's only like one victim. And in this case,
this guy's got hundreds of thousands. So.
Yeah. The question I had, too, that is not made clear here is, like, what did he actually do to profit, or what kind of profit did he make from all of these enterprises? Was he actually stealing anything from anyone? Those are a couple of questions, and maybe they didn't really have that piece of the puzzle.
Surely there'd be some sort of fine involved just for all the financial ruin that potentially is rolled out from these kinds of attacks.
Yeah, and you would think that he wasn't just doing it for fun. So there had to have been some motivation there, and I guess that was the big question I was left with. I looked a couple of different places and couldn't really find how he made out in all of this. And
I believe he ended up with a diamond pickaxe and a few stacks of emeralds from his Minecraft server.
On to headline number 2. The most stressful 4 hours of my career. How it feels to be the victim of a hacking attack. So we just talked about a type of cybercrime, and usually does seem a bit abstract as to who's affected. As we were just saying, we don't really know who the specific victims were in that case. This story is taking the perspective of the victims, the people who have actually been directly hit by an online attack, to see what kind of toll it takes on them compared to the everyday crimes that we know and love, like burglary, theft, and more.
So Professor Mark Button, a little easier to pronounce that one.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that word.
Professor Mark, get a break in this one.
Yeah, Professor Mark Button with the University of Portsmouth interviewed over 50 victims of cybercrime just to get a feel for how they personally felt. And they reported a lot of psychological damage, things along the line of anger, stress, embarrassment, fear, isolation, and, pretty understandable reactions to any crime, let alone cybercrime. So I think this is a pretty neat study and fair to look into how those effects compare between physical, real-life crimes as opposed to a ransomware attack.
Yeah, we talk about breaches all the time and ransomware attacks and all sorts of different types of cybercrime on this podcast when we talk about the news, and there are individuals on the other end. So whether it be an IT admin who kind of tell from one of the quotes in this one was probably the person who was quoted in the little excerpt that made the headline of this story. The victim said that it was the most stressful 4 hours of his career when he was expecting to get fired. because he was responsible for the web server that was attacked at his workplace. So sometimes it's just that one person in that kind of situation. Other times, maybe it's a small business owner directly impacted as well.
Right, and one thing that sort of fed into and amplified that feeling of anger and stress and embarrassment was sort of the perceived lack of assistance from law enforcement in these areas. So for a vast majority of reported cases, only 4 attacks ever led to an actual criminal conviction, and only 13 attacks even had police, call back to follow up and maybe hold an interview. So, I mean, on one hand, it's not the police's fault. They're not trained in cybersecurity. It's probably a better job for people like the FBI or the UK version of the FBI. As movies told me, MI5. But yeah, it can be especially frustrating to feel as if you were being victimized. And when you call on law enforcement and other authorities, they basically can do nothing to help you.
Yeah, you would think that there would at least be cursory follow-up in some of these cases, but I think that definitely would lead to the anger part of it, especially. This is all UK victims as well, just to make that clear, but these are people who have been victims of hacking, intentional virus infections, denial of service attacks, and ransomware. Of the crimes mentioned in this study, the businesses affected by ransomware had the most police follow-up, but as you said, lack of training in cybercrime, or the other issue is jurisdiction. Even if they are able to find out maybe who did it, where is that person?
Yeah, if they're on another continent, then you can't really go slap cuffs on them.
Yeah, or even just complete an investigation from where they are. So that really screams out for some sort of worldwide coordination, but that seems, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Button, the professor here, recommends more focus on computer crime among authorities with specific suggestions for the UK. So more training in that regard, just in general, and then putting actual offices together to deal with it specifically.
Right. So moving on to the more direct financial losses that were brought up in these articles. There was one example where someone lost £10,000, another consequence where someone lost £80,000, and a third where somebody lost $40,000, as well as 70% of their customer base, which I would argue is the more concerning matter there.
Yeah, that's not just losing the money at one time. You're losing it going forward pretty much. And none of the attacks actually led to a direct loss of more than £10,000. But these numbers that you're talking about, the 80,000 and the 40,000, were follow-up costs, which we talk about a lot, which usually, or more often than not, will actually put some of these small to medium-sized businesses out of business altogether.
Right. I also like the story of the one CEO who is, after his last attack, now switching completely to paper only at his office, which, it's hard to blame him.
Well, that's one way of saving on cybersecurity costs, I guess.
Until somebody breaks into your office and changes your safe code.
Cleaning crew at the end of the day throws away some of those papers that are floating around on the desk.
That's true.
He was a victim of a ransomware attack, so didn't necessarily lose money, but lost the data. And so one way not to lose data to a ransomware attack is to not have any data on your network.
There you go. Do some cuneiforms and put them in your basement for saving. So, Kevin, what is the most stressful 4 hours of your career? Do you remember? Mine is episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing immediately jumps to mind, but I could definitely see in this situation, if it is your job, you're just going along normal, everything's fine, and then one day you recognize that your business has been attacked, and that that's your job. You're the IT guy at the business. I can see how that would be pretty stressful.
Which do you think is worse, being the IT guy who's going to get fired for this, or being the business owner whose company may fall? Whose shoes do you want to be in least?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on how many people are at the company too. And, if they have an IT admin, that probably means they have a decent number of staff. It's not just like a
one or two man shop.
Yeah, one or two man shop.
Yeah.
So
CEO and IT guy.
So yeah, that would definitely be a tough one, and you'd be worried for all of your colleagues as well, and families, everything.
Have you ever personally been the victim of a cyber attack?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think in my younger years I dealt with it one time, but it was just a little virus. Everybody gets those now and then, so...
Yeah. I mean, you get phishing scams and things of that nature. I don't believe I've ever clicked on one, but sometimes I
held
marvel.
for ransom.
Yeah, me neither. But sometimes I do marvel at how intricate they are, and you can certainly see why people might fall for something like that. And they are attempting to get more personal as well.
Mm-hmm.
On to headline number 3. What will cybersecurity's new normal look like? So this one, we will get into that IoT bit that we talked about a little earlier, but the new normal is unfortunately a term we do hear a lot these days relating to the coronavirus pandemic, how it's affected everyday life both now and how it will affect everyday life in the future. And this article focuses on what that new normal is or will be relating to the world of network security.
Right. We've talked about the new normal. I think we've used that exact phrase several times in the last few episodes.
I think we might have come up with it
we
ourselves.
Probably did. Yeah. We definitely primed the pump on that one. But that's definitely something a lot of companies are talking about, not only with COVID-19 during the height of the pandemic, but now the sort of aftermath and fallout of everything that's happened. There seem to be quite a few companies that are planning to work from home, or at least partially from home indefinitely, and that's definitely going to change the cybersecurity landscape as far as how we secure these people, how we authenticate people when they are working from home, and basically switching to that more hybrid environment, if not an almost completely remote work environment in some cases.
Right, yeah. So we've talked in a number of our recent episodes about securing your remote workforce and how to combine that with securing your physical office space that you've already had set up for a while. And that's really one of the big new normal shifts here that several of the experts that are interviewed in this dark reading piece are saying. Bryson Bort, the co-founder of ICS Village, says really it means a major shift in cybersecurity due to the changing threat service. Kirsten Todd of the Cyber Readiness Institute says no employer she's talked to expects to fully bring back their workforce in 2020, if ever. So she coins that phrase, hybrid workforce, that you mentioned. So the overarching challenge is not only securing that remote worker and securing your physical workspace, but also creating that unified cybersecurity structure while still making work possible remotely in a high-performance kind of setting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting sort of twist if you've spent the last several years preparing for one way of life, and then all of a sudden you've got a new challenge ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So, for example, one big challenge right now is just plain authenticating who is actually on the other end of that device. So in the past, everybody was coming into the workplace. Physical security was fairly easy because everyone was within eyeshot, but now you can't just say, hey, that's a trusted device, let's go ahead and let it right on the server. You have to authenticate who's actually using it at this point, and making sure that, an intruder has not inserted themselves into the middle of that equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that threat surface just exponentially grows when you think about even one remote employee may be working from a couple of different spots over the course of a week. They might be at home one day, they might be relative's house another day, they might be at a hotel, who knows, but they might be using 5 or 6 different devices to try and access company information. And so one of the suggestions here from Anton Klipmark with Behaviosec says the new normal needs to be built around the granularity of human behavior instead of the typical binary questions like, is this a device you recognize?
Right, and I think that actually ties in really well to our interview where we spoke about women in the workplace focusing more particularly on human behavior, training, things like that, rather than their male counterparts looking at everything as you said here, a binary question of, is this safe, on, off, that kind of toggle mentality. And, maybe this is a great time for women to take those leadership positions during this shift in the new normal.
Mm-hmm. You consider the training aspect that we talked about as being a focus, that's not even really mentioned in this piece, but it seems like now more than ever, training your remote workforce in security in this situation is different than even if you've been doing a pretty good job of keeping them trained up in how to handle themselves while they're sitting at a desk in your office building. This is a different situation. So there needs to be training developed for them, and IT admins need to make sure they're trained up in how they want to set up their network and make sure that everything is secure from both that central location and beyond.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the coin, you've got other concerns where training is no help at all, such as IoT devices, where there really is no human or user interacting, so to speak, with these devices.
Yeah, so one of the big concerns outlined by a number of folks in this piece is the fact that IoT devices are still so unsecure and just about everywhere. And so pretty much every remote user from their home will have a few IoT devices on their home networks, which, again, that exponential thing, just you think about the one person using a couple of devices and then also having, say, 5 or 6 IoT devices sitting open on their network as well. That's a lot of places where access can be gained, and that's really what they're talking about here. Not so much that someone may be peeping on someone's camera,
right?
But that they'll use that camera to find their way into the office network.
Yeah, we definitely talked about the sonic weapons with speakers. I don't think that's the big concern here so much as just all those different attack points and all those different moving parts in your network makes it near impossible in some cases to really secure every single attack vector.
Yeah, there seems to be some optimism in this piece about the idea that IoT manufacturers are incorporating security into their devices now based on a lot of the things that we've talked about on this podcast and before this podcast as well, where there have been a number of situations where IoT hacks have taken place, and we've seen the results of those. So there's some level of consumer demand and regulatory pressure as well to make security more of a priority, but there's still not a fully centralized, you must do this or,
Right.
for IoT device manufacturers. And there are still going to be many out there who, just want to undercut on price. And so might not worry about that so much.
Right. And the author of this article is a little optimistic, I think, here, saying that security could be a selling factor for some IoT devices, maybe in the future if it becomes a bad enough arena for cybercrime, but I doubt anybody's going to be reading the box thinking, oh, wow, the security, number one feature.
Well, and I think that goes back to the difference between an office and remote workforce. So
Right.
maybe the businesses will be looking more closely at the security levels of these IoT devices and how much that's been considered. But I think a lot of home users are still just going to look for the best deal.
Yeah, which causes quite a problem with this new normal of everyone's home and business use being a little more blurred.
Mm-hmm. Another point mentioned by a few in this piece is data privacy. So a focus for work from home employees, their data privacy. Robert Waltman with Cisco says the 3 top concerns in this manner are that data might be used for an unrelated purpose, that it might be shared without permission to third parties, and that data must be kept only as long as needed. In this case, we are talking more about the employee data. We already know that consumer data is floating around everywhere, and hopefully each company that gets that data is being careful with it. But I don't know if everyone even thinks about what they do with their employee data.
That's true. Yeah, there's certain bits of information that you're sharing with your company when you do access from home, and that's something I had not considered in the past either myself.
Yeah, so that's just another piece to build into this philosophy. And really, these experts are all agreeing that now is the time to do it. Well, you see this on the horizon. We didn't have a chance to necessarily prepare for this situation a few months ago. Nobody saw it coming. But now that we know that it's here, now is the time to really work on it, make sure that your company is able to handle the hybrid work environment securely and keep everyone safe and protected. Thanks for listening to this episode of Ping, a Firewalls.com podcast. And thanks again to Dr. Nir Chitri for joining us. Check out the links in the description for Dr. Chitri's article, the headlines we discussed, and more. Subscribe or follow now, however you listen, to ensure you get our latest episodes as soon as they're available. And please do rate and review us. Visit Firewalls.com for all your network security needs, and give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. For Andrew Harmon, I'm Kevin Baxter. We'll be back soon with another episode, but in the meantime, we remind you to
Get secure, stay secure.